Hey guys, Sylvan here. Today I'm going to be analysing the Azir vs Talon matchup. Let's start with Talon's abilities. His passive is a 3-hit passive. When he hits you 3 times with any ability, his next auto attack will bleed you for a huge amount of damage. This makes up a huge part of his kill potential early game, and you need to take it into account when fighting him. His Q will dash to you if you're far away, and do massive damage if you're close to him. It's also an auto attack reset, so when comboed with W, it can inflict his passive very quickly. His W throws out 3 daggers in a cone, and they spin around and come back. They do damage on the way up and back, and they slow on the way back. As it counts for 2 stacks of his passive, you can pretty much guarantee that he's going to follow up with a Q straight after to instantly proc his passive. W has a flat cooldown of 9 seconds across all levels, so it's only reduced by cooldown reduction. His E has a cooldown of only a few seconds and allows him to jump over walls. There is a cooldown, however, for each wall that he jumps over for about, I think it's 3 minutes, and it goes down to 1 minute at max rank. His R makes him faster, invisible, sends out a whole lot of daggers in an entire circle around him, and then brings them all back once it either ends by doing damage or just the duration ends. Now I'm going to go through the strengths and weaknesses of Azir in this matchup, starting with the strengths. Azir's greatest strength in this matchup is obviously his range. Talon's going to take a lot of harass before he can get even close. You need to use this as much as you can in the early game, just to make sure Talon doesn't snowball on you. Azir also has a dash and a shield, and when comboed with something like Barrier, can have huge shields that Talon just can't break through with his bleed. Talon does all of his damage up close, so having an ult like Azir does means you can just push him back every time he ults, and you're not going to take any damage unless he flashes over. Azir's weaknesses in this matchup focus around 2 points. Talon has very high burst, and he's able to quickly burst down Azir before he's able to react with ult or position himself correctly. The second point being that Talon is really good at roaming, so it's really hard for Azir to chase him because he can end up in a 1v1 that won't go well. Overall, I favour Talon in this matchup once he gets 1 or 2 items, but heavily favour Azir once it gets to 3 or 4 items. Before we get into the gameplay, let's take a quick look at the builds. There are 2 main builds you can use in this matchup. So you got your normal build, which does a huge amount of magic penetration and thus a huge amount of damage, which is Nash's, Sorc Shoes, Void Staff, Death Cap, Liandry's Torment, and either Zhonya's, or I prefer Morello's, but Zhonya's if you're behind. You can also do that before the Liandry's, something like that. Or you can go the build that you go when you're getting stomped, which is to go Roa, Zhonya's, then Nash's, with the Sorc Shoes in there somewhere, Void Staff, and then Death Cap. Now don't forget to put a 10% CDR scaling or flat in your blues, just because you're going to end up with only 30% CDR on that build. I do highly recommend the first build, but again, the second build is there just in case you really can't handle that matchup and you just don't want to die, and you'll be useful around 30 minutes, but until then you're not going to do much. Now let's look at how to lane against Talon. Firstly, we have to start off on the offensive foot, and we've got to push him to his tower by wave 3. The way we do this is by aggressively hitting the minions at the back at the very start of the game. Placing your soldier here will allow you to attack all minions at once and make the clearing very fast. This gives us 2 advantages pretty much immediately. It's really easy to harass him because he has to stay near the minion wave, and he can't harass us because there's minions on him and that do more damage than he'd be able to do to us. I'm going to skip ahead 1 wave because I immediately abuse this advantage. Here I'm prepping the 3rd wave to push into the tower so he's not able to get any CS, and you can see that he's using mana and cooldowns to get CS that he shouldn't have to. He's going to go for this last hit, and that's when I'm going to place my soldier here and then harass him. Even if he'd gone for a trade here, I would have been able to move out of the second W's proc and he wouldn't have been able to proc the passive. Obviously this is a good way to begin the lane, and you can continue doing this kind of stuff where you start poking him so that he doesn't have a chance to harass you, but in the end, Talons are just going to start leveraging the one big strength they have, which is roaming. So what you want to do is you want to push your wave as hard as you possibly can the second they roam, and then you want to follow them. But you can't really follow them the same pathway. You got to go around in your own side of the jungle, or if you've got a fully watered river, you can actually just go around the river. And this is because if he does get the jump on you in river, it's very, very likely he'll be able to kill you. Hopefully this has given you more insight in how to play against Talon. I don't really see him as a hard matchup just because you can poke him out so easily in lane, and it turns out he actually doesn't really have anything to use against you. So I guess like 70-80% of it is just having the right builds and then poking, and then that last 20% is just ulting when he ults and, you know, that kind of silly stuff. So good luck in solo queue and have a wonderful... Wait a second, that's not my outro. Shitty Rakan montage, go! No, stand here. Stand here. Stand up. He's in range. He's in range. Didn't I tell you? What did I tell you?
He tells me.